guys, this video is about capitalism. So I'm going to teach capitalism from the isms PowerPoint. So I'll teach only the first kind of third of this PowerPoint, and then the next series of lessons will be about utilitarianism, socialism, and communism. So this shouldn't take too long. Usually I would start with this, like just a kind of a general discussion about what the role of the government is in the economy. And I'd ask your opinion. What do you think the role of the government is? Should the government be involved in the economy? Should the government regulate the economy? Should the government create things like minimum wages? Should the government make sure that everyone makes an equal wage? Should you get paid more based on the work you put in or based on how successful you are, et cetera, et cetera. So we'd have a little bit of a discussion about this. And then we talk about, how it was prior to the Industrial Revolution, which I'm going to talk about, and then what happened during the IR and kind of where we are a little bit today, which I'll get to later. So thinking back, to the era of the French Rev and even before the Middle Ages and back then when we had eras of absolute monarchs and kings and queens, the economic system was something called mercantilism. Mercantilism is this idea that for an economy or a nation to grow, it needs to simply export more than it imports. It needs to earn more money than it spends. And so what mercantilism is just the idea that you sell stuff, right? And then a nation accumulates wealth based on what they export. And usually this is in the series of either precious metal or golds or silver, stuff like that. And then these nations amass this wealth and kind of like hoard it. Typically, that looks like kings hoarding it in their bank and then using the money as they want. You know what the King of France did, all the Louis, and how they overspent, and it creates this deficit situation in France. And so this is the economic system, not only in Britain, but most of Europe for most of history until the Industrial Revolution. However, things start changing during the Enlightenment when we have these different kind of not only philosophers, but also economic thinkers, Adam Smith, physiocrats, start saying like, this really isn't the best economic system. What really should happen is an economic system where private ownership of businesses, not the government, should control the economy. And the goal of an economy should be to amass wealth overall, and the wealth should grow on itself and then create more wealth and more wealth and more wealth. And it shouldn't just be about how much you export versus how much you import. Everything should be kind of growing, all right? This concept of capitalism I touched on when we went over the Enlightenment was developed by a guy named Adam Smith. He is known as the father of capitalism. He proposes this concept right here of laissez-faire, which means hands off. The government is totally hands off. It does not interfere or interact with the economy, with the economy at all. The government does not interfere or interact with the economy at all. The economy is left to its own devices, what we call the free market, to grow or not grow. And so capitalists kind of believe that if you're poor, it's your fault. If you're rich, it's your fault. Like you must be doing something right. If you're wealthy, you must be working hard, you went to school, whatever. But if you're poor, then you must not be doing something well. You must not be working hard enough. You must not be working extra hours. Must not be trying. And so you can see where there will be essentially an error in this thinking. Key figures that your book talks about, which I will talk about, which will also be on your exam, is Adam Smith, obviously. This guy named Thomas Malthus. There's another guy named David Ricardo I'm going to reference. And these early capitalists will become known as what we call social Darwinists, which is in this chapter. It's a vocab word. You definitely need to conceptually understand that. Carnegie, I throw in there because he is a really good example of a philanthropic capitalist. He's Scottish, actually, moved to America. We're familiar with him because of his business in Pittsburgh. But he was a capitalist and believes all these things, but he also believes that it's a duty, humanitarianism, of business owners to give back to the community. He gives back in big ways in terms of libraries and museums. Anyway, I want to talk about these guys real quick. Adam Smith, you should be familiar with. He's in your book. I talked about him in the Enlightenment. He is the father of capitalism, the father of this economic thinking. He believes that the free market will produce goods at a lower cost and make it more accessible to everyone. He believes that it will be successful for countries on a whole if business owners are in charge of their own businesses without restrictions, and this wealth will accumulate and benefit all. Okay, so that's what he believes. There are these other two guys that your book talks about, who, in the midst of the Industrial Revolution and this rapid growth, like you experienced in the urban game, are early capitalists, but also who I call population guys. These will both be on your exam. They will probably be on the final, so make sure you pay attention. Thomas Malthus is a population guy, capitalist, but population. He is very scared that the population is spinning out of control, that it is going to be so bad one day that the population is going to outpace the food supply. So that as a result of outpacing the food supply, people just better stop having so many children. They really need to kind of curb that. So he really does a lot of work with the government to try to get them to encourage families to have less children. Okay, so population guy, early capitalist, population is going to outpace the food supply. David Ricardo, also a population guy, but he's not as much worried about food as he is jobs. David Ricardo also says that the population's just getting out of control. And he gives this historical argument. He says, and this is in your book, he says, historically speaking, when people earn more money, when they make more money, when they're wealthier, they have more kids because they have more money. That's how it's historically gone. And historically, when people have less money, they have less kids because they're more responsible. I don't have much money, I'm not gonna have more kids. But he says what happens in the Industrial Revolution is people have less money, but they are having more kids. And this is the opposite of how it's historically been and how it should be. And he says, if this continues to happen, if people continue to earn less money, working class, but have more kids and more kids and more kids, then our population will outpace the job market and we will have too many people and not enough jobs. And this will create tons of social burdens for society. People will be homeless, unemployed, disease will run rampant, they'll be living on the streets, XYZ. So I just wanted to kind of explain these three guys and their contribution to capitalism early on. All three of these people felt that in order to improve your life, you needed to work harder, period. And if you didn't work hard, then the result would be that you're lazy. None of these three guys said that the government should intervene in any way in your life to make it better. That is not the job of the government, it's the job of the individual. So just keep that in mind, as we continue with the Industrial Revolution, because there are some people that work really hard and just cannot get ahead. And so there will be some people who challenge this concept later. All right, at this point, I would like you to pause the video and go to page 4 in your ISMS packet, and I want you to take a look at this primary source and answer the questions about that, and then I want you to come back. Okay, you should be back. All right, I just wanted to say, after you answer those questions, obviously, this is a very negative view of capitalism. This guy here is portrayed as the business owner, and he is portrayed literally as a puppeteer, controlling the working class down here. Often in political cartoons, gluttony or abuse or hoarding money or any of the above are portrayed as oversized people or animals or whatever. In this case, this guy is very large, not only physically larger than the people, but obese, like morbidly obese. And this is to show the gluttonous behavior and the total taking advantage of the working class. So very negative view of capitalism. By contrast, this political cartoon, and again, I want you to pause this video, go to page 5 in your ISMS packet, read it, look at it, answer the questions, and then come back. Okay, I'm hoping you're back. By comparison, this is a positive view of capitalism. If you can read this, and hopefully you can see better in your packet, this hen, mother hen, in kids' storytime books and nursery rhymes, hens are mothering. They're called mother hens. And they nurture and supply and help and aid. And that's what we see here. We see a mother hen who is labeled as Ford. You all know who Henry Ford is, the car manufacturer. And this mother hen is, popping out not little chicks, but rather cars, as Ford created. And down here it says cheap, 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 like chirp, 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 chirp. And this is kind of a nod to capitalism and just saying that you can mass produce at lower costs and then supply goods at a lower cost for the consumers. And this is beneficial. So this is a really positive view, not only of the owner of factories, Ford in this case, but also for the consumers, for the rest of society. And so this is a positive view of capitalism. Okay, at this point, that is all I wanted to teach about capitalism, and this is what you'll do for the remainder of the time. I want you to go to page 8 and 9, and I want you to read the supplemental material on capitalism from your ISMS packet. There's going to be one page on capitalism, one on socialism, one on communism. I only want you to read the capitalism one, and after you read it, I want you to fill out information on your chart in the packet, which is page 6 and 7. I want you to identify advantages and disadvantages of this ism. On your chart. When you're done doing that, I want you to watch these 2 clips. These are also linked in my plans and in this PowerPoint, so click on whichever link, and then I want you to add information from these 2 clips which further explain capitalism into your chart. If you finish, you can move on with the socialism, utilitarianism, and socialism information, or you can just hang out because that will be the next lesson. All right, talk to you soon.